Disclaimer.
Now your ass is mine, and I'm guaranteeing you I'm gonna murder you. I'm letting you know that now. Because you know what? Josh might have played me, but bitch, I'm gonna play your ass out too. Watch.
A minivan pulls into a quiet neighborhood street in Pinellas Park, Florida. It is just after midnight on April 15th, 2009. Three teenage girls climb out. One of them is 18 years old. Her name is Sarah Ludemann, and she has come here to confront a rival. Within minutes, she will be stabbed through the heart with a kitchen knife. Within hours, she will be dead, and the woman holding that knife will calmly toss it over a neighbor's fence and say two words: "I'm done." This is not a story about strangers. This is a story about two teenage girls who once might have been friends in another life, both of them chasing the same boy. Both of them convinced the other one was the obstacle standing between them and happiness. For nearly a year, they fought through text messages, voicemails, and a website called MySpace. And then, for about 30 seconds in a dark parking area, that war became permanent. This is the story of Rachel Wade and Sarah Ludemann. Before we continue, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss one of these stories. Now, let's get into it. Part 1. Two girls, one boy, and a community that saw it coming. Sarah Ludemann was, by every account from the people who loved her, an ordinary and promising 18-year-old. She was earning straight A's in high school. She loved bowling. She loved the beach. She loved going to the movies with her friends. And she had already set her sights on nursing school, planning to start college that very fall. Her mother, Gay Ludemann, would later describe her simply as a good girl, the kind of daughter any parent would be proud of. None of that description hints at how her story ends, and that is exactly the point. Sarah was not a character in a crime drama. She was a real teenager with real plans that would never be fulfilled. On the other side of this story was Rachel Wade, 19 years old, petite, standing around 5 feet 4 inches tall, working a job at a local Applebee's. To some who knew her, she seemed sweet, even a little insecure. To others, she had a temper that could ignite fast and burn hot. One friend later admitted that Rachel could be unpredictable. But even that friend never imagined she was capable of taking a life. That gap between how someone appears day to day and what they are capable of under pressure sits at the very heart of this case. It is worth noting, too, that Rachel would later testify she carried her own fears in this story. She said she felt physically outmatched by Sarah, who stood several inches taller and outweighed her by close to 50 pounds, and she said she was also afraid of Camacho himself, telling jurors he had once threatened her with a gun if she tried to leave him, a claim Camacho denied. Whether that fear was genuine or a story shaped for a jury became one of the many threads this case never fully resolved. And then there was Josh Camacho, 19 years old, a former fast food worker, and the reason these two young women's paths crossed at all. Before either Sarah or Rachel entered the picture, Camacho had already fathered a child with another woman. He then began a relationship with Rachel, and at some point, while still involved with Rachel, he also began seeing Sarah. People close to him used one word again and again to describe his approach to relationships: a player. He did not appear to end things cleanly with one before starting with the other. Instead, he let both relationships run in parallel, and when the two young women eventually discovered they were sharing the same boyfriend, the damage was already done. This is where the central mystery of the story really begins. Not who killed who, that part is tragically clear. But how does a private, painful love triangle turn into a public execution played out for the entire community to watch? The answer starts in the summer of 2008, when Sarah and Rachel each realized the truth about Camacho at roughly the same time. Instead of directing their anger at the boy who had deceived them both, they turned it on each other. It is a pattern that plays out in schools and friend groups everywhere. Competition and heartbreak curdling into hatred aimed sideways instead of where it belongs. But in this particular case, that pattern had a body count. By the time their conflict became public knowledge among friends and classmates, it was already loud. It played out over text messages sent late at night, in voicemails left in fits of anger, and on MySpace, the social media platform of the era where a single new photo posted with the wrong caption could ignite hours of fighting. Both girls, according to people who knew them, contributed to the escalation. This was never a case of one entirely innocent party and one entirely guilty one. It was two young women, both hurt, both humiliated, both convinced they alone deserved Camacho's loyalty, feeding a fire that neither of them seemed able or willing to put out. What makes this chapter of the story so unsettling in hindsight is how visible the warning signs were. This was not a sudden, unexplainable act of violence. This was a slow, burning conflict that dozens of people witnessed unfold in real time. Friends read the messages. Friends heard the voicemails. Some even watched confrontations happen in public parking lots months before the fatal night. And yet nobody, not a parent, not a friend, not even the two girls themselves, managed to pull the emergency brake before it was too late. There is also a quieter, sadder detail sitting underneath all of this. Both Sarah and Rachel were still teenagers, technically transitioning into adulthood, still years away from the emotional maturity that might have allowed either of them to simply walk away. Their brains, like most teenage brains, were wired to feel each slight and each betrayal as an emergency. And Camacho, the one person who might have diffused the entire situation by being honest, with both of them from the start, instead let the emergency keep building. Understanding how that failure happened means going deeper into the months-long campaign of harassment that both young women waged against each other. A campaign that, as we are about to see, contained a threat so specific and so chilling that it would later be played, word for word, in a courtroom. Part 2. The War of Words and the Voicemail that would haunt a courtroom. By late summer of 2008, whatever restraint Sarah and Rachel had shown at the very beginning of their conflict had completely disappeared. What had started as jealous comments and pointed social media posts had turned into a sustained campaign of harassment, running in both directions. This was not a single blow-up followed by silence. This was months of sustained conflict, the kind that never gives either side a chance to cool down before the next spark arrives. Their battlefield was the technology available to teenagers at the time. Text messages fired off late at night, voicemails left in moments of pure fury.
Watch your face, Sarah, seriously. Answer your phone, don't be You want to come through my neighborhood and be a psycho bitch, just like Aaron. With Josh's car, you're with me when you with his seriously. I'm letting you know now, you're either going to get up or something of yours is, so watch the out or answer your phone. Stop being a bitch.
And MySpace, the dominant social platform before Facebook took over that space. A single photo of Sarah and Camacho at the beach, posted with an innocent-seeming caption, was enough to set off hours of retaliation. Both young women appeared to understand exactly how to wound the other, using shared friends, mutual acquaintances, and public posts to make sure their rival knew she was being watched and being judged. But this was not confined to screens. The conflict spilled out into real public spaces again and again. There was a confrontation outside a movie theater, another in the parking lot of a Taco Bell, and yet another at the Applebee's where Rachel worked her shifts. Each time, according to people who witnessed these run-ins, tempers flared instantly, raised voices, threats, sometimes physical posturing, and each time somehow everyone involved walked away. It created a dangerous pattern, a sense perhaps that these encounters, however heated, always ended the same way, with both girls simply going home. That assumption would prove fatal. Co-workers at the Applebee's later recalled Rachel receiving phone calls mid-shift that visibly rattled her, stepping away from tables to argue in hushed, furious tones before returning to work as though nothing had happened. It was, by every description, exhausting, a low-grade emergency that never fully resolved and never fully exploded. Either, at least not yet. The single most damning piece of evidence to come out of this entire period arrived in the form of a voicemail. In August of 2008, Rachel Wade called Sarah Ludemann's phone and left a message dripping with rage. In it, she accused Sarah of posting a new photo with Camacho specifically to provoke her. She warned Sarah to watch her back, and she stated, in no uncertain terms, that she intended to kill her.
Please tell me, Sarah, why you would be a dumb enough to put a brand new picture of you and Josh at the beach on your MySpace. Seriously, I told you to watch your back and not chill with him. Now your ass is mine, and I'm guaranteeing you I'm gonna murder you. I'm letting you know that now, because you know what? Josh might have played me, but bitch, I'm gonna play your ass out too. Watch. You're a fat bitch, and I'm gonna kill you.
This was not a vague, hyperbolic insult of the kind teenagers throw around constantly online. This was specific, this was direct, and crucially, it was recorded, saved, and eventually handed over to police when prosecutors later played that recording in open court nearly 2 years after it was left. It landed like a confession delivered in advance. What makes this moment in the story so important is not simply that a threat was made. Threats, especially among teenagers caught in an emotional feud, are unfortunately common, and most of them never turn into anything close to violence. What makes this one different is what happened next. Nothing. No one intervened. No parent confiscated a phone. No school counselor was looped in. No restraining order was filed. The threat simply became one more piece of noise in an already loud, ongoing war, absorbed into the daily rhythm of the conflict rather than treated as the red flag it clearly was. Psychologists who studied cases like this one later pointed out that when young people feel their entire identity is wrapped up in a romantic relationship, any perceived threat to that relationship can start to feel like a threat to their very sense of self. Under that kind of pressure, normal impulse control can quietly erode, and words that would otherwise be dismissed as empty venting start to calcify into something closer to intent. Meanwhile, Josh Camacho continued moving between both young women, according to testimony given later. He never fully committed to either Sarah or Rachel, and he never fully ended things with either of them either. He would later tell a jury that he viewed both relationships as casual, using the phrase friends with benefits to describe what he shared with each of them, a description that stunned many observers given the level of devotion and devastation both young women were expressing over him. If his account was accurate, then 2 teenage girls had spent the better part of a year threatening each other's lives over a relationship that, from his side at least, was never as serious as it appeared from theirs. As the months rolled on into the winter of 2008 and into the early months of 2009, the intensity did not fade. If anything, it compounded. Every new perceived slight added to a growing pile of resentment on both sides. Friends of both girls later described an atmosphere thick with dread. Several people who knew them said, looking back, that they sensed something bad was coming. They simply could not have predicted exactly when or how far it would go. That answer would arrive on the night of April 15, 2009, when one final decision to drive across town and confront a rival face-to-face would turn 8 months of threats into an irreversible tragedy. Part 3. The night it became permanent. On the evening of April 15, 2009, Sarah Ludemann received word that Rachel Wade was staying at a friend's house nearby. For 8 months, Sarah had absorbed threats, insults, and provocations, and on this particular night, something in her decided enough was enough. She gathered 2 friends, climbed into her mother's minivan, and drove toward the address where Rachel was staying. Whatever her intention was walking in, whether it was simply to talk, to intimidate, or to fight, we will never fully know because Sarah Ludemann would not survive the night. What exactly happened in the moments after that van pulled up remains, even now, a matter of dispute. According to prosecutors, Rachel Wade did not wait to see what Sarah wanted. She grabbed a kitchen knife from inside the home where she was staying and moved quickly toward the driver's side of the minivan, closing the distance between herself and Sarah before Sarah had even fully stepped out of the vehicle. According to one witness who later testified, all 3 girls exited the van together and approached Rachel as a group, while other witnesses maintained it was Rachel who closed the gap and struck first. This conflict in the testimony would become one of the central battles of the eventual trial. What is not in dispute is what happened next. Rachel Wade stabbed Sarah Ludemann, once in the shoulder and once in the chest, with enough force that the blade of the knife reportedly bent from the impact. One of those wounds tore into Sarah's heart. The entire physical confrontation lasted only a matter of seconds. Seconds that would define both of these young women's lives forever, even mortally wounded. Sarah managed to reach for her phone and call Camacho, the young man both of them had spent the better part of a year fighting over, to tell him what had just happened. There is something almost unbearably human in that detail. In her final conscious moments, Sarah's instinct was to reach out to the person at the very center of this entire conflict. Camacho rushed toward the scene along with Sarah's father, but there was nothing anyone could do to undo what had already occurred. In the immediate aftermath, witnesses say Rachel Wade did something that would later strike many observers as chilling in its calm. She threw the murder weapon over a neighbor's fence, and according to those nearby, she said only 2 words, "I'm done." Whether that phrase reflected shock, detachment, or something colder is a question that would follow her for years. One of Sarah's friends who had ridden along in the minivan that night called 911 within moments of the stabbing, her voice on the recording rising into a scream as she told the dispatcher what she had just watched happen.
You're in Pinellas Park. Okay, what happened?
Rachel! She stabbed her.
Okay, where's the body of the patient stabbed?
I swear to God, this
Right.
someone has got to come. This girl on the ground, passed out. I don't know if she's alive. I don't know.
That call, along with everything else from that night, would later be entered into evidence and played for a jury. When police arrived and began questioning everyone at the scene, Rachel reportedly asked an officer for a cigarette, a detail prosecutors would later use to suggest a troubling lack of visible emotion in the wake of a killing, though defense supporters would argue it reflected shock rather than callousness. Sarah Ludemann was rushed to Northside Hospital, but the damage from the stab wound to her heart proved too severe. She was pronounced dead just after 2 in the morning. An 18-year-old girl with straight A's, plans for nursing school, and a mother who called her a good girl, was gone when police informed Rachel Wade that Sarah had died from her injuries. Witnesses say she broke down sobbing. Whatever calm she had displayed moments after the stabbing evidently gave way once the full weight of what had happened became real. Rachel was arrested several hours later and charged with second-degree murder. The charge reflected a legal judgment that her actions, while intentional in the moment, were not the result of premeditated planning in the way a first-degree murder charge would imply. Still, the charge was serious, carrying a potential sentence ranging from 20.5 years up to life in prison for a girl who had turned 19 only months earlier. The consequences of those 30 violent seconds were about to reshape the rest of her life. She was held without bond in the months that followed, waiting inside a jail cell as attorneys on both sides began building the cases that would decide her future, a stark contrast to the freedom and independence she had once bragged about on her own social media profile.
A judge sentenced a Pinellas Park woman today to prison for more years than she's been alive. Rachel Wade learned her fate for her role in the deadly battle over the same boy.
In the days that followed, the case exploded into local and then national headlines, a story with all the ingredients that guarantee attention: teenagers, a love triangle, threats made and captured on tape, and a killing that felt, to many who followed it, both entirely preventable and somehow inevitable at the same time. Reporters descended on Pinellas Park. Cameras camped outside the courthouse, and a community that had watched this feud simmer for months now had to reckon with how it had ended. But the story was far from over, because the courtroom battle that followed would force a jury and the public to decide whether Rachel Wade was a frightened teenager defending herself, or a jealous young woman who had finally made good on a threat she left on a voicemail 8 months earlier. Part 4. The Trial, the Verdict, and What Was Left Behind. Rachel Wade's trial began on July 20th, 2010, more than a year after Sarah Ludemann's death. Held at the Pinellas County Courthouse in Clearwater, Florida, the case had already drawn significant attention, and portions of the proceedings were broadcast on television and streamed live online, allowing strangers across the country to watch 2 teenagers' worst night play out in exacting legal detail. Jury selection alone took considerable time, as attorneys on both sides worked to find 12 people who had not already formed an opinion about a case that had been discussed on local news broadcasts for more than a year. The defense built its entire strategy around a single argument: self-defense. Attorney Jay Hebert told the jury that it was Sarah who had gone looking for a confrontation that night, driving across town specifically to find Rachel. He argued that once Sarah and her friends arrived, they were the ones who escalated things into violence, and that Rachel, small in stature and already fearful after months of threats and confrontations, believed she had no choice but to defend herself. Rachel herself took the stand and told jurors a similar story, insisting she never approached the van, that she had asked Sarah to leave her alone long before that night, and that in the chaos and panic of the moment, she was not even fully aware Sarah had been stabbed until she looked down and saw blood. But the prosecution had a very different story to tell, and they had the evidence to back it up. They called witnesses who testified that it was Rachel, not Sarah, who closed the distance that night, grabbing the knife and moving aggressively toward the driver's side of the minivan before Sarah had even finished stepping out. They played the panicked 911 call made in the seconds after the stabbing. They walked jurors through the physical evidence, a bent knife blade, a fatal wound to the heart, and a defendant who, according to police, calmly discarded the weapon and asked for a cigarette rather than showing signs of panic or remorse. And then came the piece of evidence that many observers believe sealed Rachel's fate, the voicemail from August of 2008. Prosecutors played the recording for the jury in full, Rachel's own voice, captured nearly a year before the killing, promising in explicit terms that she intended to end Sarah's life. It is one thing to argue that a stabbing was a split-second reaction born of fear. It is another thing entirely for a jury to hear the defendant, in her own voice, describing that exact outcome as her intention months in advance. Legal analysts who covered the trial noted that this recording did more damage to the self-defense argument than almost any other piece of evidence presented. After 3 days of testimony, the jury did not need long to reach a decision, deliberating for less than 3 hours before returning their verdict. Guilty of second-degree murder on September 3, 2010, Rachel Wade was sentenced to 27 years in prison. At her sentencing hearing, she stood before Sarah's parents and offered an apology, telling them she was sorry to have caused them such great pain, and admitting that some days she wished it had been her instead. Whatever regret those words carried, they could not undo what had happened in that parking area 18 months earlier, and they could not give Sarah's parents back their daughter.
This judge decided to sentence Wade to
The judge in this case basically said that Rachel Wade's lack of maturity and her age argued against a maximum sentence.
In the years since, the case has continued to resonate, not because it involves some rare or exotic criminal mastermind, but because it involves something painfully ordinary: teenage jealousy, insecurity, and access to a weapon, meeting at exactly the wrong moment. It became a cautionary story repeated by parents, psychologists, and educators. A reminder of how quickly digital age conflict, amplified by phones and social media, can spill over into the physical world with irreversible consequences. The case was even adapted into a television film, bringing the story to an even wider audience years after the courtroom cameras had gone dark. As for the people left behind, Josh Camacho, the young man both women had fought so hard to keep, faced no criminal charges in connection with Sarah's death. He went on with his life, while the two women whose devotion to him had shaped their final year of freedom, or their final months of life, carried the consequences alone. A close friend of Sarah's later reflected that Camacho had been her first boyfriend and her first heartbreak, and that even at the very end, Sarah's feelings for him had never fully faded. Sarah's mother continued to describe her daughter in the simplest, most heartbreaking terms available: a good girl, with dreams of nursing school that would never be realized. Rachel Wade, now in her mid-30s, remains incarcerated at a correctional institution in Florida, with a projected release date years still into the future. In the end, this case offers no clean villain and no simple lesson, only a warning that jealousy left unchecked, threats left unspoken to, and a young man unwilling to be honest with either of the women in his life, combined to turn an ordinary teenage rivalry into a permanent, irreversible tragedy, one that ended not with a resolution, but with an empty seat at a nursing school that would never be filled. That concludes today's case. If you found this documentary informative, consider subscribing and turning on notifications so you don't miss future investigations. If you have a case you'd like us to cover, leave it in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Stay curious, stay respectful, and we'll see you in the next investigation.